Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final installment of our summer learning series. My name is Carly Grant, and I'm the Marketing Program Manager for Executive Education at the University of St. Thomas. We're so excited to have you join us today. If you missed the first two sessions of our summer learning series, those are available on the Executive Education website. So you can go to stthomas.edu/exec ed and find those recordings there as well. So what is St. Thomas Executive Education? We offer professional development opportunities to both individuals and to organizations and corporations that focus on smart, practical, and personalized professional development. Some examples of these courses include our high demand mini MBA, our certified professional project management program that's backed by the Project Management Institute, as well as some of our great new upcoming courses, including digital marketing, strategic innovation, and what you're about to hear about today, which is the business applications of AI. University of St. Thomas was built on Dakota land. So we wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that the university is doing everything we can to commit ourselves to telling the truth, build relationships, heal the wounds, and humbly offer our respect to the Dakota elders and people with whom the University of St. Thomas ground sits upon. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mark Price, who's an adjunct professor here at the Opus College of Business at the University of St. Thomas. Mark, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Carly. And it's my pleasure to be able to share with you some of what I'm learning about AI. This is one of the most fascinating subjects to be involved with in my entire career. I've never been involved in anything that is changing as fast, adapting, and developing new applications and new challenges simultaneously. So what I will show you today is my best cut at where AI is at the moment, but I want to let you know that it is at least a week out of date. So there are things that you could ask me about that I will not know about and things that I have not yet studied. So in this kind of rapidly changing environment, you have kind of two different choices. You've got the ability to get in as things are evolving and changing really quickly, or you run the risk of being swept away by it. My goal is to make sure that we bring not just to this particular conversation, but we bring, in fact, to all of St. Thomas the capability to attract the students we want and to enable our students to succeed coming out of their experience at the university. On the business side of it, there is research that is showing that companies prefer to hire students with less business experience and AI experience, as opposed to people with more business experience with no AI experience. So we owe it to our students to give them the tools so that they will succeed. That's part of what I'm doing here, is to work on that, and then in the executive education to extend it to executives and managers in organizations who find themselves in a faster changing world than they ever thought was possible when they went into business in the first place. So let me share my screen, and then I'm going to take you through a little bit of my learning, give you kind of a fundamental background on what AI is, give you some information about how it's being used in different industries. We'll spend a little time specifically on generative AI, which would be ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, which is not exactly the same, Gemini, all of those tools, probably the ones that you hear about the most. I'll give you a small snippet, time permitting, of where I see things going, and we'll talk a little bit about the ethical challenges at the end. So let me, as you can tell, I have a lot to talk about in a very small period of time, so give me a second. Carly, would you confirm that everyone can see?
Looks great.
Okay, thank you. So I will now do my best to move it ahead. Not a lot about me. I have a real passion for teaching students and teaching business executives. I ran my own analytics consulting firm, and I have experience as a chief data officer at a nonprofit as well. What I really get a kick out of doing is helping people see things they never thought possible and then help them find a way to achieve them. That's my personal mission in life. AI is a perfect way to be able to achieve that. So, request for all of you now, if you have questions, or when you have questions, because there are many questions associated with the development and the use of AI, please put them in chat. And if you can also put in what you'd hope to get out of this talk today. I'll address all of the questions I can in the talk, and I will follow up to the rest in a follow-up email as well. So just when you start out, you know you've made it in technology when you've been done up by Dilbert. So yes, indeed, the pointy-haired man wants you to create artificial intelligence as smart as him. Dilbert says, I should have that by lunchtime. And the pointy-haired man said, because you're a fast worker. And Dilbert goes, sure, that's exactly it. But I've got several Dilberts in here because we need to be able to laugh and enjoy all of these changes at the same time that we face the challenges. There is and has been multiple depictions of AI in movies and TV. These are usually what would be considered self-aware AI, which does not exist at this moment. And we certainly have the good, such as Data from Star Trek and Sunny from iRobot. And then we have the not so good from The Matrix, and everyone remembers HAL 9000 and opening the pod bay doors in one of the earlier depictions of AI. So both movies have shown both the good side and the bad side. Neither one of these is true right now. So what we're seeing today, as you start to read and hear about AI, is what I call the AI trough, which is there was a tremendous hype and boom about everything that AI could do. ChatGPT grew to over 1 million users in 1 week, 100 million users in 2 months. It is the fastest growing adoption of technology that we've seen in our lifetimes. With that, guaranteed you're going to get a blowback, right? And the blowback is people are going to try it. It's not going to work the way they thought. And they're going to say this is all just smoke and mirrors, right? This is a lot of sound, as Shakespeare would say, a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. But the truth is, it's not a panacea. It doesn't solve everything. It's not a waste of time. It's actually something in the middle, and something that I'm going to show you some more about today. So one of the places we heard about the trough in the last 2 or 3 weeks was a report that came out about Chevron. Chevron paid for Copilot, which is the Microsoft AI tool, for 20,000 employees. And as far as I can tell from the articles, basically gave it to them and said, go do cool things with this. What they discovered was that it was very hard to determine whether or not there was any significant benefit to using Copilot when you just simply hand it out. And yes, they're a little dissatisfied, not just with how people are using the tool, but also with their ability to measure it. One of the key learnings that comes out of this is that AI succeeds the best in business and probably overall when you provide training and use cases to go along with the technology. Without that, you'll see a lot of people fumbling around. And remember, most people are doing a full-time job already. So their ability to have time to play and explore with these technologies, is pretty limited. So from that standpoint, if they don't get a path or a runway to something that's going to make a difference for them, at some point they're going to get too busy and walk away from it. Before we talk about the challenges of implementing AI in organizations, let me back up and talk just a little bit about what AI is and how other firms are using it today. So go all the way back. AI has been around since the 1950s in different formats. My cousin was working on it 30 years ago at Caltech, MIT. The top technical universities were working very hard on AI. What is AI in the first place? AI recognizes patterns in data and then draws conclusions based on extrapolation from available information and improves performance over time. Essentially, the generative AI that you see right now, and that's the piece where this really started to become popular, was in 2022 when ChatGPT was released by OpenAI, and it was released to everybody. And that's when people became very aware of AI. What it does is it looks at relationships between words and thoughts and written down thoughts and comments by going through a huge amount of data, sometimes virtually everything that's available on the internet. And by looking at where things are connected together, it's able to first create words, then create sentences, then start to create, if you will, complete concepts. And I don't want to call them thoughts because this is not human intelligence, but it can create concepts and it can enhance concepts based on the history of everything that it has studied over time. We'll talk a little bit when we hit the piece around bias of the problems that come along when you actually study history, and history becomes the basis for things going forward. But I'll get to that in just a minute. So AI is not just ChatGPT. There are 5 different kinds of AI that are out there right now in different applications. Generative AI is what you would call ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, what you would hear about more in the current press. Machine learning is another technology that is, in my mind, probably in the short term, even more valuable, because what it does is it compares data, again, to find patterns, but patterns around numbers. Let me give you an example of that. So if you have a factory and you have sensors on all the machines in your factory, you can give that into a machine learning setup where it can identify the patterns of readings on the sensors that tell you that a particular piece of equipment is likely to break down. And it can tell you that before it breaks down. So what you can do then in a factory is next time you have preventive maintenance, which is a scheduled downtime in a factory, you can remove that part ahead of time and put in a new one. The impact of that to the business is substantial because unplanned outages are extremely expensive to a factory, both in terms of overtime and parts, but also in terms of production, delivery, customer expectation, all of those pieces. By studying the patterns of the data, the system can tell leadership in operations where to fix what to improve all the key metrics. So again, something that you may not think is that revolutionary. The truth is it is, and what does make it work is how much easier it is to do now than it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago, when you could achieve similar-ish kinds of pieces, but it required a huge amount of outside programming to put it together. Then I'll go on and just give you a quick update on 3 more. One is computer vision. Computer vision is the ability to take images and make decisions coming from that. An example would be an insurance company. I was talking to one of the top 5 insurance companies, the chief data officer, about 2 months ago. And believe it or not, they still get insurance forms, handwritten applications, handwritten and faxed in. They then were giving those to people who were typing, trying to enter all the information on it. They were able to reduce the amount of time and increase the accuracy, both of those dramatically, so that they could take better care of prospects who were coming in and be able to get them answers on acceptances much faster than they'd ever been able to do before. Natural language processing is another piece within artificial intelligence that helps computers interact with human language. One of the more common places is what they call sentiment analysis, which is where you could study a call center transcript and figure out what the perceptions were of both the call center agent and the person who had called in with the issue, and then you can score those. You can identify opportunities to train the call center agents better to improve experience. And then deep learning is using neural networks, and this is extremely advanced AI, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging through this one right now, but it's the kind of thing that can look at patterns in space, for example, and understand movements of stars and changes in weather. So you might say climate prediction would be a function of deep learning. So like I said, 5 different kinds of AI, not all the same. Generative AI is certainly the one that you would probably have heard the most. So given the amount of processing power required to do this, which you get a sense is massive, and the storage capability to be able to take and codify data out of the information that's available on the internet, it is truly mind-boggling how much processing it requires. And what you see is that the top companies that are doing this are literally building server farms that are acres in size to be able to do the processing and to be able to store the information. How are they able to do it now when they weren't able to do it maybe even 5 years ago? It's an application of something called Moore's Law from Gordon Moore, who's one of the founders of Intel. And Gordon suggested that within every, I'm going to bastardize it a bit, roughly every 2 years, processing power doubles, storage doubles, and the cost goes down by half. What we're seeing right now in terms of AI capability is about every 2 years, we're seeing a 10-fold increase in processing power without a subsequent increase in the cost. So that kind of capability really does turn everything upside down in terms of what you thought you could do versus what you can do right now with these systems. In addition to that, we've seen a flow of venture capital money, government funding, and corporate investment into AI. And then the other piece not to be undersold is the growth of open source. Open source means that a lot of the code and a lot of the information about how AI is being built, particularly in these large language models, is actually available for other data scientists to work on. So you're getting a collaboration between organizations that actually raises the tide for everyone that's involved. So let me now take a minute and take you through just some applications of how AI is being used across different industries. This is by no means comprehensive. Okay, it's simply to give you a taste of what is being done right now, not even what people are looking to develop in the future. So I'll take you through a couple examples from finance and manufacturing first. Fraud detection. When I was working in my last organization, one of the places that we made the biggest difference using ChatGPT right in the early days was in fraud prediction. We had built very extensive predictive models from a data scientist, and then we found that by putting that model through Gen AI, we actually improved the fraud detection so that we could take it from days to hours to minutes that we could identify fraudulent activity on the site. It also is being used in program trading and then developing wealth strategies and financial advice on a personalized basis. In manufacturing, I already talked to you about predictive maintenance to prevent equipment failures, quality control using AI-powered visual inspection systems. So if you have a line of product and you have people who are looking at the finished products to try to identify errors or mistakes or anything that might have happened in the process to make that product less than ready for prime time, now AI can use basically computer vision and be able to detect minute flaws in finished products at a way that humans can't at this point. And then you can see, as you've seen in manufacturing, particularly in fabrics and clothing, that you can have robots work alongside human workers for increased efficiency and increased safety, which I think is really important. In retail, personalized product recommendations. And you're going to see a lot of the word personalization as it relates to AI and marketing. We've done a lot in marketing that is around taking groups of customers or segments and then providing unique treatments or information, offers, products to individual segments. What AI is giving us is the power to be able to customize that further, to literally be able to, on an individual basis, provide different experiences to better fit the needs of specific customers, not just customer savings, not just customer segments. Dynamic pricing is something that is in place already. We all know it from airlines where, unfortunately, you may be sitting next to someone who has a very different price than you. The work around that has been around for some time. Again, it's taken a lot of work to be able to build dynamic pricing systems. They're going to become much easier to do. That, by the way, is both a benefit to companies and an issue. And we'll talk a little bit about the challenges around dynamic pricing as we get towards the end of this presentation. And then in medical and in healthcare, I'm incredibly excited by the capabilities of AI to make a significant difference. We're already seeing in radiology the use of artificial intelligence to identify potential cancer on X-rays or CAT scans at a finer level than people can easily do it, and at a faster rate than people could do it right now. So that allows for better detection. Better detection allows for better treatment. Personalized treatment plans have started to come around because of the growth in understanding of genomics and genetic engineering when they map the human genome. Now it will work even more to be able to create personalized treatment plans, for example, for people who have cancer. Your plan will not be exactly the same as anyone else's because it will be tailored to you to have the maximum impact to the illness at the minimum amount of distress to you at the same time. And then there's already robotic assisted surgeries, but that will become much more common and allow for surgeries at an even finer level of detail and precision than surgeons can do right now in some cases, which opens up certain fields and I'm not even going to go into this one because I know I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. But you could imagine, and that's a joke. And you can imagine what you could do if you have robotic support in surgery. And then in transportation, a lot of it is around safety. You've already seen autonomous vehicles, driverless cars. They are not perfect, right? And the same as you see when you hear about hallucinations and certain pieces of Gen AI that may not give you exactly what you want the first time, or might give you something that looks right that isn't. What I tell people is this is version 1.0 of generative AI like ChatGPT. If you remember version 1.0 of the iPhone, it was called the iPod, and it could hold 1,000 songs, and that's all it could do. And it took a lot of work to be able to load that 1,000 songs in. We look at where we've gone from an iPod back then to our iPhone right now. Steve Jobs had no idea that the device he called a phone is actually used less for actually talking on it than it is for photography, text, and chat. Right? As things have evolved over time, the uses continue to expand. And sometime later this year, maybe into early next year, Apple is going to announce their Apple Intelligence. I know it's out in pilot. I was reading about it last night, but it still needs a little work to be able to help you with writing or any sort of technical challenges you might have. You can actually get the support right then. If you've ever sat at a stoplight with nobody coming the other direction, you will understand the benefit of AI on reducing congestion and improving traffic flows. And then delivery drones for faster and more convenient last mile delivery. We already know that rural areas struggle to receive rapid delivery of items. This is one of the technologies that can hopefully make a difference in that. Again, understand we are in the world of AI 1.0. Where we're going to go with it is continued innovation and enhancement over time that's going to enable us to do things that even with the AI today look really hard, and they're going to be significantly easier to do. Now I'm going to dig deeper into Gen AI. And generative AI is, once again, just to remind you, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, the tools that you might commonly hear about. So what is Gen AI if you step back? As I mentioned before, it analyzes large amounts of data, looks at the patterns, and then uses that understanding to generate something that is similar but new. And what we're seeing right now is that Gen AI can produce new and original content in text, images, music, and even videos. by learning patterns from existing data. Now, what I've done till now, you may think is rather Pollyannish. You may think that I'm only talking about the benefits of AI and ignoring some of the challenges associated with it. One of the challenges, first off, that's not true. Second off, one of the challenges is copyright. Copyright is a huge issue with generative AI. Much of the information that was used to build these tools was information from published sources where the Gen AI companies did not get permission to use that information. There's a number of lawsuits going out right now. Most cases, it does not look like the publishers are going to stop the Gen AI tools from using their material. In most cases, it looks like the Gen AI companies are going to pay the publishers to be able to get access to their information. But it raises a question of ownership and access of data. And within Gen AI, rarely is Gen AI used to reproduce a specific piece of content exactly. As I mentioned before, Gen AI is used to understand underlying patterns and then generate something that is similar but new. And that's going to raise a significant copyright issue. In fact, it already has. Because the question is whether or not a piece of content is it is a replication of somebody's copyrighted information, or is it an emulation of it? Example of that would be if I were a musician and I listened to a Taylor Swift song and I liked the lyrics and I liked the tone progressions, the chord progressions, and I put it away and I write a song that is similar theme and uses similar chord progressions, but not exactly the same. Is that a copyright violation? How different does it need to be someone else's original work? And how much is it a copyright infringement? And the answer to that is I have no idea. This is something that the legal circles are going to have to figure out. It's going to be a very fine line, but it's an important one so that authors get compensated and protected on material that they've developed, and inventors get to be able to combine pieces of many different influencers together the way they are, but to be able to do it faster and easier and perhaps even better in some cases than they were to start with, without being afraid of ending up, being sued for millions of dollars. So this is something where we don't know the answer yet. We know the problem, and I know that in legal circles, they're working on it right now to figure out what that line is and how do you define it, and how do you protect what you need to protect and encourage innovation at the same time. So you can use Gen AI in a number of different kinds of ways. I've already hinted at some of them, but new product ideas, new packaging, engaging content. One of the best ways is for brainstorming. If you want 15 ideas related to a particular problem, Gen AI will, in the course of a minute, give you 15 thought starters. If you're stuck in a writing rut, or you've written something and you feel like it's very awkward, you can feed it in and get some different ways of being able to express it that perhaps better fit your needs and make it easier for people to understand. You can generate custom playlists. And then I am very, very optimistic about the capabilities of AI in drug development, particularly for pharmaceuticals. I believe that we will see treatments that have never existed for some of the most persistent diseases in the world coming out in the next 2 or 3 years by virtue of the fact that there's so much processing speed and there's so much storage. And in cases where matching drug combinations to treat different diseases is clearly a function of processing speed and storage, it ought to be able to increase dramatically. And I'm very, very hopeful of something like that. So it was interesting. I did a little search and I found this chart the other day of the top 50 Gen AI tools. And what I was fascinated by was the fact that there were a lot on here that I had never heard of. And I do this for a living. So we won't go all the way through the list, but if you just look through the top 5, you can see that ChatGPT and Gemini are in there. But there's also a tool called Character.ai that allows you to use a chat bot. So you can ask a question and get an answer back as a specific character. So it could be great for children's stories, for example. Quillbot, which is something that improves your writing, similar to Grammarly. So it gives you can write in different styles, or it gives you ways to improve your phrasing or correct grammar or spelling mistakes. Poe is a tool that allows you to see 3 or 4 Gen AI tools on a single screen. And Perplexity is an AI-enhanced search model that has capabilities very similar to some of the more traditional Gen AI tools, but gives you the sources for each one of the pieces that it's citing. So you can imagine as you start to look through this, the sheer quantity of these tools that have come up and largely become public in the last year and a half. The number of new companies and new Gen AI tools that are coming out, I'm getting 4 or 5 a day, every single day. And I get 5 newsletters a day, 5 days a week, and I'm behind on all the things that are changing. So this just kind of gives you a sense of, some of the opportunity associated with it, as well as you imagine, it's going to be a very complex world to figure out what kind of tool you might want to use to solve what kind of problem you might have. Okay, let's talk about hallucinations for a second. So hallucinations are what happens when a Gen AI tool produces a factually incorrect response, either logically inconsistent or completely unrelated to a given input. For example, you might ask Gen AI to give you, 5 articles on a certain subject, and it will give you the titles of the articles. It will give you the names of the people who wrote them, the publishing for them, and the publisher for them, and the links. And when you click on the first one, it doesn't exist. So what you do, you can actually ask the Gen AI tool, is what you just gave me real? And it will tell you, no, it's not real at all. It's not like it's hiding it, but within these tools, the way they've been developed is a sense of, again, I'm not going to ascribe human behavior to it, but a desire to please. I mean, the tool works very hard to give you the best answer it can give you. And when it doesn't find one that seems to meet your criteria the best, it will invent its own. Now, this is obviously a huge issue when you're relying on this information. So there's a couple common corrections that we're seeing people do right now. One is you validate the results across multiple models. So you take the same problem that you have and you feed the problem into ChatGPT, and then you feed the problem into Gemini, and you look at what the difference is in the answers. The other way to do that is to take the question and the answer from ChatGPT, put the question and the answer into Gemini, and ask it whether that is whether those answers are real, and are they the best possible answers. So you can use one tool to basically play off another to make sure you're getting real, authentic information that you can count on and take an action on. The other one, I'm not going to get into what's called retrieval augmented generation, but there are ways that you can tune a generative AI model specifically just on a small set of data. The easiest one of those would be you could train in a company, you could train a Gen AI tool on your benefits manual or on your company handbook. And then if somebody came in and asked a question, the Gen AI tool would know to go back to those sources to be able to find the information. And often I recommend that one of the best places to get started with Gen AI is to do something just like that. Because what do people ask for in a company? They say, I need my password to get into where my 401k is. What is the link to the 401k in the first place? How do I take time off? If I'm going to do education, are there forms I need to fill out to get that education reimbursed? All of those pieces are like simple knowledge pieces that a Gen AI tool can find in your documents and save your HR staff significant time just answering questions that are not sophisticated, but are very important to the people who are asking them. The other thing to talk about is bias. Okay, most Gen AI tools exhibit some degree of demographic, gender, racial, cultural, and other biases. We should not be surprised by this. Fundamentally, any model that is trained on history will reflect the biases within that history. For example, if you were to ask a Gen AI tool for a medical professional who's a man, it would show you a doctor. If you were to ask for a medical professional who's a woman, it would show you a nurse. And in addition, both of them would overwhelmingly be likely to be white. These are a reflection of the data. It's not a value judgment. It's a reflection that these tools have been trained on data that reflects the biases of the world. How do you get around that? You have to do some specific kinds of training data to be able to address it. And then you need to have a feedback loop from users as well. This is a problem that's going to take a lot of time, but we shouldn't be surprised because addressing bias in society and in culture takes a lot of time. But the first place to start with this is to be aware of these tendencies. And then you can actually, in your prompts, prompt is what you would call the question that you're asking in the Gen AI tool. You can put in specific, if you will, reminders to the Gen AI around racial, economic, gender disparities, so that the tool will improve its responses both in the short term and in the long term.
Mark, we're at a 5-minute time check.
Oh my word. And I have many, many, many more things to share with you. I'm just going to hit one piece here real quickly. But leave this, if you want to know why you can't use AI everywhere, why can't we just use artificial intelligence to manage our sales funnel? AI responds, I found 4 places that sell funnel cakes relatively close to you. So you always have to be aware of the possibility that it may not be answering the question that you think you will. I will do this as one last page here and then show you a little bit of where to go from here. Prompt engineering is becoming a field that people are studying. And prompt engineering is the process of writing and refining the inputs that you put in to get a better and better answer. And if you use any of these generative AI tools, you will see that just asking sometimes a very basic question doesn't get you everything that you want to learn. So there's a simple acronym called COSTAR, where AI does best when the prompt you're giving it gives the context of what you're asking for, what's the objective, what style you'd like it in, what tone, who's your audience, and what the response will be used for. As you make more and more detailed prompts using these types of acronyms as guidelines, what you will see is that you get more and more precise answers over time. So owing to the time, I'm going to skip through some of the examples and the other technology, and I'm going to just take you for a second here to augmented, quantum, the data model. Where do you go from here? So what I've tried to do today is give you a sense for the breadth of AI that is out there, the different types of AI, how it's being used. I've just barely touched on bias. I haven't spent nearly enough time on the ethical issues associated with certain uses of AI as well. But where you go from this now in order to begin to build AI into your organization is you need to do education. You need to, as I mentioned with Chevron, you need to, if you just dump Gen AI tools out there, you are unlikely to get results on your teams that are going to make you happy. You need to develop user stories. You need to discuss change management and address this like digital transformation or any substantial change in your organization. You need to quantify it, and you need to put money into pilots that are focused on use cases that will produce measurable results as examples to your organization. As you get a sense, there's a lot more I really want to talk to you about in this, and a lot more that we can do together to help to bring AI understanding to your groups and your teams. I'm going to be teaching a class on this for 2 days, and that will really get into all the pieces that I just laid out here about how to not just have a broad understanding, avoid the obvious landmines, but also build the structure to be able to start AI and grow AI implementations in your company so you can see the benefits. It's a force multiplier. It has the ability to save money and improve results and improve your customer experience at the same time. And we're just getting going on it. Carly, I think I probably have worked through all of my time. So I don't know if there are any questions that people have that I can address in the short term.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and we're happy to open up the chat or open up the floor to questions if anyone wants to ask any of Mark. Well, wonderful. Mark, if any come in
Right,
after
yes.
the fact, I'll go ahead and send you all of that information. If not, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. If you're looking for more information on executive education programs, you can find the link there on your screen at stthomas.edu/exec-ed. If you're watching this on your computer and you have your mobile device handy, you can also scan that QR code and it'll lead you right back to that main executive education page. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.